build the thing right or build the right thing. Doesn't matter which way you say it. They're two sides of the same coin. It's a bit of an experimental talk because I've not ever prepared a talk like this before. I don't know how it's going to turn out. But it's quite appropriate because it's a talk about assumptions, experimentation and validation. So I do actually have some validation and feedback here. There's blue, orange and pink post-it. So at the end of the talk, if you thought it was good, please just whip off a blue post-it and, I don't know, chuck it on the desk. If it was all right but could have done better, orange post-it. And if you'd really rather been somewhere else, a pink post-it. And there's some pens as well, so if you want to leave a little comment or a word or something like that, feel free to do so. But yeah, that's the validation for this experiment. So, yes, validating assumptions with the customer. So, this is a bit about me. My name is Martin. I'm co-founder of The Familiar. We do human-centered design and technology. So it's a lot about, well, it's design, but it's really about uncovering unknowns about products or services. It's about helping organisations find a route to understand better what they could do for their customers, how they can provide value for their customers, how they can provide value for their employees, for themselves. I'm also co-founder and nominally Chief Design Officer of a partnership called Forge. That's 4 local businesses all based around sort of doing different services and things with their websites. And as well as that, I'm on the committee and the early careers advocate for the British Computer Society Agile Methods Specialist Group. So, yeah, making assumptions about customers, about everything. We all do it. This did the rounds a few years ago, and it was people building websites and designing websites, chortling to each other about, oh, look at the users, aren't they not intelligent? How could they possibly do that? And I mean, I've seen things in user experience tests, customer experience tests. We think like, what? How do they not get that? Or why are people doing things that way? And the thing is that we assume that the customers or the users are seeing a glass full of water, when in fact they're kind of seeing that, which is allegedly the cockpit of the space shuttle, but I'm not sure. And it's this assumption that because we know what something is and how it works, and we assume that we understand a marketplace or requirements or what people need, that everybody else or the people that we're building this for do the same, understand it the same way, or they're going to use it in the same way, or they actually need what we think they're going to need. And quite often there's this huge mismatch. So back in the day when I started The Familiar, before it was called The Familiar, so it's almost 19 years ago now, we kind of built websites. And at the time, in the mid-2000s, it was like doing art. It was GeoCities, it was personal expression, and it was like, this is something new, and this is creative, and it's all about me. And we kind of had this inkling that, well, it's not actually about us. It's about the people we're building this for, which is customers. And then we sort of looked at Don't Make Me Think, which is a brilliant introduction to usability. That was one of the books on the bookshelf right from the word go. There was another, well, it was brilliant at the time, Some of Web Pages That Suck. It was very funny in the early noughties. I would probably not read it now. There are some fairly dodgy opinions and expressions. But we kind of had this inkling that it's not about us being artists, it's about doing something for our customers. And in actual fact, it was even further than that. What we've sort of come to realise over the years, that it's not about our customers or our clients, it's about their customers or clients. Effectively, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And throughout those years, we often ended up running into problems. This is a Cynefin framework. Cynefin is Welsh for habitat, apparently. And it's basically this idea that our environment where we are living, where we are operating, and how that environment actually is compared to us, kind of dictates how we respond to the environment, how we make decisions, what we do. Now, I'm not an expert in this. I tend to sort of grab things and use what I need to from them, and I don't really go into the depths, but there's a lot of information out here about this. And for a long time, when we were building websites, we ran into these problems, and it's because we were sort of thinking that the environment was simple. And this would be something I would say like making a cheese toastie. We kind of know that we need bread, and we know that we need some sort of cheese, and we know that we need to cut the bread, cut the cheese, cook them. It's really well known. Pretty much everybody can do it. You might kind of decide what cheese you're going to use or what bread you're going to use, but the basic process is the same. And everybody has their own version of best practice for a toasting. And I suppose that sort of some of what we do as personal projects, things that we've, other people have spoken about today, they kind of fall into that simple thing. They know what they want to do, they know the end result, they know how to do it, there's an established method, so we're going to go away and do it. And you can repeat that every single time. Then, when you come to complicated, it's, well, we know the outcome, but we don't quite know how we're going to get there. And again, that might be the kind of things that people have spoken about in other talks. I wasn't sure how I wanted to, build a huge video game, but I kind of knew what process I'd need to do. I could figure out the rest. There was information, there were resources online, so we did it. And the classic one is sort of a car that is really complicated to build. I couldn't do it, but there is, once it's figured out for that car and it's been tested, there's sort of an established process. There's a production line and you can repeat it again. And when we did websites, we kind of assumed that they were going to be complicated or simple, that we know everything about them. And our clients assumed that we'd know everything about them. It's like, how much is it going to cost? When's it going to be delivered? It's like, well, actually, that's really hard questions to answer. Unless it's a really simple thing that we've done before, we don't really have the answer to that. And even if we have done it before, we're working with you as a client, and you may not be the same as the other clients we've worked for. You may have different processes. You may actually want different feedback. You may suddenly change your mind about things. So we don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know how much it's going to cost. And essentially, a lot of what we're doing when we're building digital products, when we're looking at services, is complex. It's kind of like a play with tagliatelle. You can pull out a string and start looking at it. You can pull out a string of tagliatelle, but that's going to affect the rest of the plate because it's going to move bits inside and it's going to pull bits out with it. So every time you try and get a handle on the problem, part of that problem is going to change. And so you're really trying to experiment a bit. What is the result? Let's get that feedback and then adapt your approach to the feedback. It's all about building in feedback loops. And in that sense, well, we're not going to get an idea of what's going on in that plate of tagliatelle to begin with, but through various iterations, we're going to come to a better understanding of what the problem is or how we might solve it. And then the other is chaotic, which we're not going to really talk about much today. That's essentially the dinosaurs are loose. What do I do? Well, who knows? Run, try not to get eaten. We're going to try something, and if we don't get eaten, hey, we're going to try something else. But that's kind of the chaotic type area, and that's what happened a few years ago with COVID and all the rest. We had no idea what to do. So it's coming down to, if we sort of bring it back to organisations, customers, it's about lacking understanding and it's about requiring communication and two-way communication. Yeah, we've got, okay, we know what a minimum viable product kind of would look like. It's like, yeah, that's okay, yeah, that'll work. And we kind of know where we want to end up. Actually, it turns out that the market needs something different. And what's happened with this one is they go, oh well, the market needs that, not quite the same as the product goal. And we've got this really hazy understanding. And then, okay, we've built a beta and we think it's that, but actually it's this. But then what this shows is, well, we've actually just gone ahead and let marketing paint this rosy picture, and we've done a few things, and then we've launched it. And that's sort of where we come in. So we get to say here and here, and then instead of doing this bit, we actually start saying, well, how can we reduce the risk of ending up with that? Well, why not do something really quick and dirty? Why not run some paper prototypes of what we think the market needs and match them up with what the market actually needs? And so before you start taking really consequential decisions, let's get a bit of information, let's validate our assumptions about what we think the market needs, and based on that feedback, we can actually adjust our approach, and then all of a sudden, our understanding isn't quite so pixelated. We start to get a bit more definition, and we're not going to get there first go, but we could release something, and it's closer to the MVP. Well, it is closer to the MVP because it might not actually be viable, but we're kind of closer. And then, rather than going on to the whole thing, why not do another iteration? And let's do it quickly, so that we get more learning, more understanding. We've got a slightly less pixelated picture of what's required. Okay, so we'll release that. Has that provided a bit more value to people? Well, let's validate that. Let's understand. Is that valuable, what we've just done? No, it's not. Well, okay, well, we've wasted 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but it's not like going through 6 months of development. So let's do another iteration. And it's all about boxing risk, finding ways to box risk with as little expenditure of resources as possible, understanding, does that add value to our customers? And then based on that feedback, plotting the route, left or right, maybe straight ahead. And one of the ways we might do that is using design thinking. Now this is actually a diagram that Sam and I came up with. We did, and yeah, it was brilliant work. So we might kind of know that a client has a problem, but they don't necessarily understand what the problem is. They kind of think they do, but they don't understand. So first of all, we'll be gathering data about what's going on. And we gather as much as possible, we're going really wide. And we gather all this data, and then we analyse it and reduce all that data down to a definition of what the problem might be. So we get a better idea of what this challenge is. We can then start to create as many ideas as possible about how to solve that challenge. Yeah? And we've got all those ideas. Then we would select 1 or maybe 2 ideas. Okay, well, let's prototype it as quickly as we can, as efficiently as we can. We'll test it, we'll validate it. And the actual double diamond that comes from the Design Council about design thinking kind of stops there, and it assumes that you do more. But what we actually did was add the feedback loop explicitly. So once you validate it, you actually reflect on that learning, and you use that learning to then feed into your next round of data gathering. As well as design thinking, we work with agile frameworks, methodologies. This one here, it sort of talks about product lifecycle. So we start with design thinking, then you move into lean startup, and then you do something like Scrum or other agile. I'm not a particular fan of this boxing things because I think these different tools can actually be appropriate at different points for developing a product or service. And it kind of depends on what you're trying to achieve and what the product or service is. But the essential thing with all of them, they go about it in different ways, but it's this essential thing about boxing something up into small pieces of risk, doing it, launch it or test it, you get some kind of validation and feedback, and then based on that feedback, you then do the next iteration. I actually much more like this one. This is really good. This modern agile, make people awesome, make safety a prerequisite, experiment and learn rapidly, and deliver value continuously. So the safety is what really interests me with this, because
I was just going to say, what exactly do you mean by safety?
There's a couple of things that I have no idea what the person who drew this meant, but there's a couple of things that to me. So when you're working in a team or with a team and you are breaking things into small iterations, you are testing your assumptions, you're testing what you've built, you're validating that, you kind of need everybody working together. You need people who are going to take responsibility for what they're going to do, but it can also be quite challenging in that you may have got things wrong. You know, you want people to take responsibility for things, but you know, it's an experiment. We might get it wrong. So part of safety is actually having a safe environment within a team, within an organisation, where you can experiment, where it's understood that not everything is going to be right first time, where you can make mistakes. And actually, the value of that has been learning, well, we don't do this again. You need the responsibility of actually taking hold of that information and learning from that information, but it's being responsible, but also being respectful to team members and understanding that you can and you will fail in a certain iteration. Where I think it also comes in with safety is that there was a really good example about using this to box risk. It was talking about Scrum and sprints, and typically you might have sort of like an iteration that lasts 2 weeks or a month, and you're going to decide, you're going to prioritise what you're going to do, then you're going to decide how you do it, and the developers have total control over how they're going to do it. Management does not get a say. All they say is what their priority is. They help inform the priority. They don't actually get to even choose the priorities. That's the product owner. Yeah, but the management will inform that, and the product owners probably, they should be getting information from customers as well. But the point being that because it's time boxed and you know that you are going to release something at the end of that 2 weeks or at the end of that month, you've kind of time boxed that risk so that if the assumptions are wrong, you've not gone ahead and done 6 months development. So you build this kind of safety valve, this feedback mechanism into the whole process. And that's where I see safety being that dual thing about being safe for the people and adding this risk management into the expenditure, effectively. Yeah. Which comes into experimenting and learning rapidly. Delivering value is a really good one, because the whole point about this is that until we've actually sent what we've built out to customers and they've used it, we're only assuming that it's valuable to them. It's by them using it that they validate that it is actually valuable. So it's releasing something to customers as quickly as possible. And if we're building prototypes, it's releasing it to testers as quickly as possible. And, well, making people awesome. Yeah, it's all about people. This was a workshop I did back last summer. It was with a team that were building a digital product. And it was about getting that team excited, engaged. It was about them getting this common understanding of, well, what is actually the problem we want to solve. And they were very much focused on, well, we could do this, well, we could do that, well, we could do this. Well, okay, well, what do estate agents? Brilliant, thank you. Right. Yeah, it's sort of like, what do your customers want to do? So, yeah, all about the people. How does this apply to wizarding? Well, this was, I think, the rough theme for the day. I immediately thought of, yeah, Gandalf, and I don't know how old Gandalf is, 7,000 years old, 7th generation, I don't know. But when I actually looked up in a dictionary, one of the origins of the word wizard was a wise person. And it's like, well, I don't know what I don't know. But now I know that I don't know what I don't know. Sometimes I do know what I don't know. And I think part of this wisdom is when you kind of understand, well, I might know about something, but there's so much out there that I don't know. And how are we going to find out what we don't know? Well, let's lower the risk, let's increase the learning frequency and build up some knowledge. And I've sort of been applying it to as much of things as I can. Yeah, these are tomatoes, but they're not just any tomatoes. These are apparently San Marzano tomatoes, which are the ones grown outside Naples and prized for making the tomato sauce for pizzas in Naples, and you can only get official San Marzano tomatoes from one little area just outside, but nevertheless, you can buy San Marzano tomatoes in the shops over here. And then it was like, I wonder if I could grow these. So my parents have a greenhouse and they've got a garden, and so I ran some experiments. And I put some seeds in a tray and put a bit of water in. It's like 3 weeks later, oh no, this has been a failure. A couple of weeks after that, it's like, oh, something's growing. Oh, wow. Well, are these going to survive? I don't know, but well, let's try and get these plants a bit bigger. We put some in a greenhouse, I put some outside, some were in pots, some were in the ground. They didn't all work. We had amazing heat, even for Italy, which actually destroyed some of the plants. But some of them ended up with tomatoes, and I've got that information now about what works. Probably in a greenhouse is going to work, probably planted in the ground. Being careful with the humidity, lots in the soil but not too much in the air. So next year I'm going to run some more experiments and hopefully make a bit more. And just to finish up, I think we might have a couple of minutes for questions, but I do want to finish up and let the next guy come in. If you want to speak to me about human-centered design, design thinking, agile product, I'm around for the rest of the afternoon. I don't do Twitter, but I've got some LinkedIn and Instagram things there. I do want to quickly plug the BCS, Agile Methods Specialist Group for the British Computer Society. We've got a lunchtime event in London on Friday the 2nd of December, but more importantly, I'm the early careers advocate. So if there's anybody who is starting or thinking of getting involved in some sort of agile career, come and see me and I can give you some breakdown of what help and information is available through the BCS. And we're also putting on a series of events next year, and we're especially encouraging people who are new to public speaking to come along and do short talks and things like that, and there'll be some help involved as well. So if anybody's interested in Agile and in come and see me about that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.